Intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Janice, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the current issues of the Dunkirk Observer on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Legislator Pushes for Job Training by Gregory Bacon. A Chautauqua County lawmaker is expressing concern that the county may not be investing enough money in job training. During the county legislature meeting, officials were asked to vote in favor of a number of agreements with the County Industrial Development Agency for attraction and development of tourism-related businesses. The County IDA for Business Development, Assistance and Promotion, the County Region Economic Development Corporation for Greenway Development, the CREDC for Tourism Development and Placemaking. The last resolution had the county agreeing to spend $50,000 for 2026. None of the others listed a financial cost, although the money has been placed in the 2026 budget for them. Lawmakers were also asked to authorize an agreement with the Small Business Development Center at Jamestown Community College, providing $59,719 for 2026 for technical assistance for startup businesses. Before the vote on the resolutions, legislator Fred Larson, Democrat from Jamestown, spoke out. None of these 5 resolutions, which use words such as attraction, development, business development, assistance, promotion, none of them offer any funds for job training, he said. Larson is a member of the legislature's Planning and Economic Committee. I want our Economic Development Committee to explore what is going on with JCC in terms of job training in the North County and what is the future of Job Corps in Cassadaga, he said. Larson continued, stating he believes in order to attract and retain businesses, the county and its IDA offering some training and resources on a consistent annual basis is critical. Larson said, although he is in support of the 5 resolutions, more money is needed to train individuals. The fact is, there really is no money in our $300 million 2026 budget for job training, he said. During a committee meeting the week before, Larson had brought up that none of the resolutions had funds for job training. In that discussion, IDA Chief Executive Officer Mark Geiza said they work with other agencies for job training, including JCC, the Dream It Do It program, and others. Council backs bonding to cover city deficit by M.J. Stafford. Dunkirk is ready to float bonds in an attempt to cover its deficit. The City Common Council authorized a pair of resolutions to enable the bonds during a rare Sunday session. The council has already had its final regular meeting of the year, but Mayor Kate Woodowitz insisted that the resolutions needed to be passed by December 31, or Dunkirk would lose access to the bonding. The supposedly low-interest bonds are a key part of the state's Fiscal Recovery Act to help the deficit-challenged city. The first resolution created a new city chief fiscal officer to handle the bond sales. Councilman at large Nick Weiser announced an amendment that apparently removed the appointment of current fiscal affairs officer Ellen Luskowiak to the new position. Council is considering an amended version of the resolution prepared by bond counsel, which I believe removes individual appointments and focuses solely on authorization language, Weiser said. This amended version does not change the subject matter of the resolution as noticed. City Attorney Elliot Raimondo said the measure specifically allows the city to refinance its debt and lays out a position, not a specific person, to do it. The second resolution authorizes the issuance of up to $17 million in deficit bonds to enact that debt refinancing, Weiser said. Like the first resolution, the second passed by a 4-0 vote, with outgoing Councilwoman Abigail Zatorsky absent. It's the culmination of a process that's been underway for well over a year at this point, Weiser said. The city has now received the state comptroller's certification of our deficit, which was the final prerequisite under the Fiscal Recovery Act. The passage of this resolution allows the city to issue deficit bonds to repay the state's $13.7 million loan and satisfy other outstanding obligations, including those to the New York State retirement system. Weiser said the resolutions don't restructure city government, appoint any new officers, or change staffing. It simply authorizes the bond issuance and delegates execution authority as permitted under state law. Without this action, the city cannot move forward with the financing authorized by the state legislature. The resolutions only came before council last week, despite their time-sensitive nature. Councilwoman Nancy Nichols commented, "I'm just a little bit amazed that it was such a late notification of these resolutions. We're going in by the skin of the teeth at the last possible moment." Widowitz later said, "I would really like to thank this council for understanding the urgency and the need and necessity to get these resolutions passed. As we all know, it's been a very difficult 2 years, and this is kind of our light at the end of the tunnel. Hopefully, we will get somebody who wants to purchase our debt at a very reasonable interest rate, which will ultimately save our residents money." The mayor concluded, "I appreciate your hard work, your effort, your energy, and for the council that will be leaving, we will miss you." Local/nation Community Notebook. City lists holiday schedule. Dunkirk City Hall will be closed on Wednesday for Christmas Eve and Thursday for Christmas Day. As per the 2025 curbside collection schedule, rubbish on the Wednesday collection zone, District C, will be picked up as per usual schedule. Wednesday rubbish in the Thursday collection zone, District A, will be picked up on Friday. Rubbish in the Friday collection zone, District D, will be picked up on Saturday. Copies of the curbside collection schedule, which are valid until February 28th, are still available in the City Clerk's office, City Treasurer's office, and Public Works Department, as well as the city's website, www.cityofdunkirkny.gov. The congregation bids 2025 farewell. The Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Northern Chautauqua at 222 Temple Street in Fredonia holds a Sunday worship service at 11 a.m., both at their physical location and on Zoom. For those wishing to join us virtually, please visit https://tinyurl.com/CALUUCNC. Click on Worship Service on the date you are attending and scroll down for the Zoom link. For those attending the in-service person service, please follow the driveway and park in the lower lot behind the building. Handicap parking is located between the two buildings and directly behind the second building. The theme for December is Choosing Hope. On Sunday, a fire communion service with Reverend Ron Skorowski and Cheryl Rich will be presented. Participants will spend the last Sunday morning of the year together, saying farewell to 2025 and welcoming 2026 with time for quiet contemplation. Lighting candles of hope, a fire communion ritual, and a homily by Skorowski. The Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Northern Chautauqua strives to be a vibrant, welcoming, multi-generational, diverse community, enlivened by the power of radical love. For more information about us, visit our website at www.uucnc.org or call 716-679-7944. Coming up, Wednesday, December 31st, New Year's Eve, Tops New York 890 meeting, First United Presbyterian Church, 35 Park Place, Silver Creek. Weigh-ins begin at 8:45 a.m. Meeting starts at 9:35. All are welcome. Use the Main Street entrance. For details, call 716-680-0313. Tops New York, number 1094 of Brockton meeting, Tri-Church, 35 East Main Street, Brockton. Weigh-ins at 2 p.m., meeting at 2:30 p.m. All are welcome to visit with new friends and get help losing weight. For details, contact Kathy at 716-792-4226. New Year's Eve party, Doubletree by Hilton, Jamestown, 150 West 4th Street, Jamestown, 9 p.m. Live music hosted by G-Day K. Fit. Cash bar, late night bites provided, 21 plus. Purchase tickets at dhenyp.eventbrite.com. New Year's Eve prime rib buffet, masquerade party at Peak and Peak. Bistro 210, 1495 Old Road in Clymer, 9 p.m. Entertainment by DJ Josh with sound investment. Event tickets are $125 per person, which includes prime rib buffet, 2 drink tickets, private bar access, midnight munchies, dessert stations. Prime rib buffet is $82 per person, 6 to 11 years old. $38 per person, children under 5. Children under 5 are complimentary. Both tickets include champagne toast at midnight and entertainment. Cassadaga American Legion Post 1280 New Year's Ball Drop is at 228 Maple Avenue, starting at 6 p.m. And Thursday, January 1st, Cassadaga American Legion Post 1280 has bingo at 228 Maple Avenue at 1 p.m. Jamestown man pleads guilty to meth charges. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Dunkirk Observer on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Jamestown man pleads guilty to meth charges. U.S. Attorney Michael DiGiacomo has announced that Ruben Medina, 20, of Jamestown, pleaded guilty before U.S. Magistrate Judge Jeremiah J. McCarthy to possession with intent to distribute 5 grams or more methamphetamine, which carries a mandatory minimum penalty of 5 years in prison, a maximum of 40 years, and a fine of $5 million. Assistant U.S. Attorney Joshua A. Violante, who is handling the case, stated that on September 11, 2024, Medina was pulled over by a Jamestown police officer because of an outstanding probation warrant. Initially, he refused to exit the vehicle, but later complied and was taken into custody. A search of Medina recovered approximately 109 grams of methamphetamine. Previously, on June 25, 2024, a search warrant was executed at a Newland Avenue residence associated with Medina. Investigators seized cocaine, methamphetamine, fentanyl, p-fluorofentanyl, Suboxone strips, $200 cash, a digital scale, and a firearm. The case is part of Operation Take Back America, a nationwide initiative that marshals the full resources of the Department of Justice to repel the invasion of illegal immigration, achieve the total elimination of cartels and transnational criminal organizations, TCOs, and protect our communities from the perpetrators of violent crime. Operation Take Back America streamlines efforts and resources from the Department's Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force and Project Safe Neighborhood. The plea is the result of an investigation by the Drug Enforcement Administration under the direction of Frank Tarantino, New York Field Division, and the Jamestown Police Department under the direction of Chief Timothy Jackson. Sentencing will be scheduled at a later date. New York cuts 100-foot rule for gas hookups by Kristen Smith. Property owners hooking up natural gas lines in new homes will soon cover the cost themselves. This after Governor Kathy Hochul signed legislation that undoes the 100-foot rule, a decades-old provision that requires utility companies to connect new buildings to the system for free, so long as they are located within 100 feet of a gas main. Supporters of the new law say these costs are passed on to other consumers. It's simply unfair, especially when so many people are struggling right now, to expect existing utility ratepayers to foot the bill for a gas hookup for a brand new house that is not their own, Hochul said. I have made affordability a top priority, and doing away with this 40-year-old subsidy that has outlived its purpose will help with that. The connection price tag ranges between $2,500 and $10,000 per home. Some estimates show that amounts to a $200 million annual savings for bill payers, said Environmental Advocates New York. The nonprofit says doing away with the rule will bring the state closer to its climatic action targets and encourage more homeowners to choose lower emission utility services. Critics, however, say the bill is a blow to affordability that lets utility companies off the hook. Without it, families and small businesses could face thousands of unexpected costs just to access basic heat and energy, said Senator Patricia Canzaroni Fitzpatrick, Republican of Valley Stream, in a letter to Hochul sent in June. Banning affordable, reliable energy and shifting the cost to families is not a climate solution. The new law will take effect in 12 months and follows in the footsteps of 5 other states: California, Massachusetts, Colorado, Maryland, and Oregon. "60 Minutes pulls story about Trump deportations" by David Bowder. An internal CBS News battle over a 60-minute story critical of the Trump administration has exploded publicly, with a correspondent charging it was kept off the air for political reasons, and news chief Barry Weiss saying Monday the story did not advance the ball. 2 hours before airtime Sunday, CBS announced that the story, where correspondent Sharon Alfonsi spoke to deportees who had been sent to El Salvador's notorious CECOT prison, would not be a part of the show. Weiss, the Free Press founder, named CBS News editor-in-chief in October, said it was her decision. The dispute puts one of journalism's most respected brands and a frequent target of President Donald Trump back in the spotlight and amplifies questions about whether Weiss's appointment was a signal that CBS News was headed in a more Trump-friendly direction. Alfonsi, in an email sent to fellow 60-minute correspondents, said the story was factually correct and had been cleared by CBS lawyers and its standards division. But the Trump administration had refused to comment for the story. and Weiss wanted a greater effort made to get their point of view. In my view, pulling it now after every rigorous internal check has been met is not an editorial decision, it is a political one, Alfonsi wrote in the email. She did not immediately respond to requests for comment from the Associated Press. Alfonsi said in the email that interviews were sought with, or questions directed to, sometimes both, the White House, State Department, and Department of Homeland Security. Government silence is a statement, not a veto, Alfonsi wrote. Their refusal to be interviewed is a tactical maneuver designed to kill the story. If the administration's refusal to participate becomes a valid reason to spike a story, we have effectively handed them a kill switch for any reporting they find inconvenient. Spike is a journalist term for killing a story. But Weiss, in a statement, said that she looked forward to airing Alfonsi's piece when it's ready. Speaking Monday at the daily CBS News internal editorial call, Weiss was clearly angered by Alfonsi's memo. A transcript of Weiss's message was provided by CBS News. The only newsroom I'm interested in running is one in which we are able to have contentious disagreements about the thorniest editorial matters with respect and, crucially, where we assume the best intent of our colleagues, Weiss said. Anything else is completely unacceptable. She said that while Alfonsi's story presented powerful testimony about torture at the CECOT prison, the New York Times and other outlets had already done similar work. To run a story on this subject 2 months later, we need to do more, she said. And this is 60 Minutes. We need to be able to get the principles on the record and on camera. It wasn't clear whether Weiss's involvement in seeking administration comment was sought. She reportedly helped the newscast arrange interviews with Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff this past fall to discuss Trump's Middle East peace efforts. Trump himself was interviewed by Norah O'Donnell on a 60 Minutes telecast that aired on November 2nd. Trump has been sharply critical of 60 Minutes. He refused to grant the show an interview prior to last fall's election, then sued the network over how it handled an interview with election opponent Kamala Harris. CBS parent Paramount Global agreed to settle the lawsuit by paying Trump $16 million this past summer. More recently, Trump angrily reacted to correspondent Leslie Stahl's interview with Trump former ally turned critic Marjorie Taylor Greene. 60 Minutes was notably tough on Trump during the first months of his second term, particularly in stories done by correspondent Scott Pelley. In accepting an award from USC Annenberg earlier this month for his journalism, Pelley noted that the stories were aired last spring with an absolute minimum of interference. Pelley said that people at 60 Minutes were concerned about what new ownership installed at Paramount this summer would mean for the broadcast. It's early yet, but what I can tell you is we are doing the same kinds of story with the same kind of rigor, and we have experienced no corporate interference of any kind, Pelley said then, according to Deadline.com. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Dunkirk Observer on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Wall Street Report. U.S. stocks rise at the start of a holiday week. New York. Stocks rose on Wall Street Monday to open what's expected to be a relatively calm holiday week. The gains were broad. Technology companies and banks did much of the heavy lifting. Industrial companies also gave a strong push to major indexes. The S&P 500 rose 43.99 points, or 0.6%, to 6,878.49. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 227.79 points, or 0.5%, to 48,362.68. The Nasdaq Composite rose 121.21 points, or 0.5%, to 23,428.83. Smaller companies' stocks did particularly well. The Russell 2000 index outpaced other major indexes with a 1.2% gain. The gains also helped major indexes push further into winning territory for the month as a choppy December nears its end. Technology companies, especially those focused on artificial intelligence, have been the main force behind the market's oscillations. The direction of AI-related stocks will likely determine whether the market closes out December with gains or losses. If a Santa Claus rally does kick in this year, St. Nick's gift bag will likely need to be full of positive tech sentiment, wrote Chris Larkin, Managing Director of Trading and Investing at E-Trade from Morgan Stanley. NVIDIA, which has had a big role in driving the broader tech sector higher this year, rose 1.5%. JP Morgan was among the bigger winners in the banking sector with a 1.9% gain. Uber rose 2.5% and Lyft rose 2.7% after announcing plans to bring robot taxi services to London next year. Paramount Skydance rose 4.3%. The company sweetened its hostile takeover bid for Warner Brothers Discovery with an irrevocable personal guarantee from Larry Ellison, the founder of Oracle and father of Paramount CEO David Ellison. He is putting up billions of dollars to back the deal as part of the latest move in Paramount's bidding war against Netflix. Warner Brothers Discovery rose 3.5% and Netflix fell 1.2%. Dominion Energy fell 3.7% after the Trump administration said it is pausing leaves for 5 large-scale offshore wind projects. It's pausing leases for 5 large-scale offshore wind projects. They include Dominion's Coastal Virginia offshore wind project. Gold and silver touched records, with oil prices jumped after the U.S. Coast Guard said it was pursuing another sanctioned oil tanker in the Caribbean. Gold prices rose 1.9% to settle at $4,469.40 adding to its consistent gains throughout the year. Silver rose 1.6%. Crude oil prices in the U.S. rose 2.4% to $58.01 a barrel. Prices for Brent crude oil, the international standard, rose 2.6% to $62.07 a barrel. Treasury yields edged higher in the bond market. The yield on the 10-year Treasury rose to 4.16% from 4.15% late February. Asian markets rose and European markets slipped. Markets in the U.S. will close early on Wednesday for Christmas Eve and remain closed on Thursday for Christmas. The short week for trading includes several economic reports that could shed more light on the condition and direction of the U.S. economy. On Tuesday, the government releases the first of 3 estimates on gross domestic product, a reflection of how the broader U.S. economy fared in the third quarter. On Wednesday, the Labor Department will release its weekly data on applications for jobless benefits, which stands as a proxy for U.S. layoffs. The Conference Board offers up results from its December Consumer Confidence Survey on Tuesday as well. The upcoming reports follow a mix of updates last week that show inflation remaining elevated and consumer confidence has diminished over the last year. Overall, the job market has been slowing and retail sales have weakened. What is an atmospheric river? AP explains the phenomenon by the Associated Press. Atmospheric rivers are massive plumes of moisture carried across the sky that can dump heavy rains or snow over land. Here's a look at the phenomenon. Where do atmospheric rivers come from? Atmospheric rivers generally form in tropical regions where warm temperatures can cause water vapor to rise into the atmosphere, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. The winds aloft then carry that moisture to northern and southern latitudes. They occur globally, but are especially significant on the west coast of the United States, where they create 30 to 50% of annual precipitation and are vital to water supplies, but also can cause storms that produce flooding and mudslides, according to NOAA. Formed by winds associated with cyclones, atmospheric rivers typically range from 250 miles to 370 miles, or 400 to 600 kilometers in width, and move under the influence of other weather. Many atmospheric river events are weak, but the powerful ones can transport extraordinary amounts of moisture. Studies have shown they can carry 7 to 15 times the average amount of water discharged daily by the Mississippi River, according to the U.S. Geological Survey. They're also getting bigger, wetter, and more frequent as Earth's atmosphere warms, according to a 2025 study. What happens when an atmospheric river reaches land? When the moisture-laden air moves over mountain ranges such as the Sierra Nevada along the California-Nevada line, the water vapor rises and cools, becoming heavy precipitation that falls as rain or snow, according to NOAA. While traditional cold winter storms out of the North Pacific build the Sierra snowpack, atmospheric rivers tend to be warm. Snow may still fall at the highest elevation, but rain usually falls on the snowpack at lower elevations. That can quickly prompt melting, runoff, and flooding, and decrease the snowpack needed for California's water supply. What is a pineapple express? This is a nickname for a strong atmospheric river that originates in the tropical Pacific near Hawaii. Where did the term atmospheric river come from? The name came from research published in the 1990s by scientists Yang Xu and Reginald E. Newell of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Atmospheric rivers are often referred to as ARs. You have been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Dunkirk Observer on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Ukraine's Zelensky says progress in U.S.-led peace talks is quite solid. By Samya Kolob and Vasilisa Stepanenko. Kiev, Ukraine. Initial drafts of U.S. proposals for a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia meet many of Kiev's demands, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Monday, although he suggested that neither side in the almost 4-year war is likely to get everything it wants in talks on reaching a settlement. Overall, it looks quite solid at this stage, the Ukrainian leaders said of recent talks with U.S. officials who are trying to steer the neighboring countries into compromises. There are some things we are probably not ready for, and I'm sure there are things the Russians are not ready for either, Zelensky told reporters in Kiev. U.S. President Donald Trump has for months been pushing for a peace agreement. However, the negotiations have run into sharply conflicting demands from Moscow and Kiev. But U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff said Sunday he held productive and constructive talks in Florida with Ukrainian and European representatives. Zelensky said that nearly 90% of Ukraine's demands have been incorporated into the draft agreements. The backbone of the proposed deal is a 20-point plan, he said. There is also a framework document on security guarantees between Ukraine, European countries, and the United States, as well as a separate document on bilateral security guarantees granted to Ukraine by the U.S. Zelensky mentioned several key points, such as the Ukrainian army remaining at a peacetime level of 800,000, membership in the European Union, and European forces under the leadership of France and the UK, and with a backstop from Washington, ensuring Ukraine's security in the air, on land, and at sea. Some key countries will provide presence in these domains. Others will continue to energy security, finance, bomb shelters, and so on, the Ukrainian president said. Ukraine is arguing that the bilateral document with the U.S. should be reviewed by the U.S. Congress, with some details and annexes kept classified. Zelensky said the U.S. team is now in talks with Russian envoys, and Washington has asked that no details be released. He added, Ukraine strikes deep inside Russia. Zelensky said Monday he met with his military commanders who reported that defensive lines are holding firm against the Russian onslaught. In recent weeks, the Russian army has significantly increased the intensity of attacks, and the number of Russian losses has increased accordingly, he said in a post on Telegram. Ukrainian forces hit an oil terminal, a pipeline, 2 parked jet fighters, and 2 ships in a series of strikes on Russian soil, officials said Monday. The attacks are part of an ongoing campaign to disrupt the Russian war effort and sow fear behind the front lines, where outnumbered Ukrainian troops are straining to hold back Russia's bigger army. The strikes also seek to undermine President Vladimir Putin's attempt to portray Russia as negotiating from a position of military strength and U.S.-led peace efforts, which have yet to make a breakthrough on key points. The killing of a top Russian general by a car bomb in Moscow on Monday, with investigators suspecting Ukraine was behind it, could be another instance of Kiev picking surprise targets. Ukrainian partisans burned Russian fighter jets. Ukrainian forces struck the Tamanfilgas oil terminal, an ammunition depot, and a launch site for attack drones inside Russian territory and Russian-held Ukrainian territory. Ukraine's general staff said in a statement Monday. The pipeline, 2 docks, and 2 ships were damaged in the southern Krasnodar region, and a large blaze broke out, the statement said, without specifying what kind of weapons were used in the attack. It added that a Ukrainian-made missile also hit a temporary base for Russia's 92nd Riverboat Brigade in Olenivka in the occupied Crimean Peninsula. The separate strike targeted an ammunitions depot in a Russian-controlled portion of the Donetsk region, aiming to slow the Russian advance there, the general staff said. A Russian launch site for attack drones was also hit. Ukrainian partisans set fire to 2 Russian jet fighters in an operation on Sunday evening at a base near Lipetsk, a city in western Russia, according to Ukraine's military intelligence. Russia's Ministry of Defense said only that its forces shot down 41 Ukrainian drones overnight, 3 of them over the Krasnodar region. Russia targets the power grid again. Meanwhile, Russian forces kept up their targeting of Ukrainians' energy sector, aiming to deprive civilians of heat and running water during the frigid winter. Russia has tried to knock out power in Ukraine throughout the war, in a tactic that Ukraine refers to as weaponizing winter. Energy infrastructure across 5 regions were attacked during the night, Ukraine's Ministry of Energy said. Russia struck Ukraine with 86 drones of different types overnight, Ukraine's Air Force said. Ukrainian forces stopped 58 of them, it said. Fight or Flee, A Tale of Two Congresswomen by Froma Harrop. Marjorie Taylor Greene's early exit from Congress reveals that her tough, broad persona was very much an act. After she angered Donald Trump by demanding release of the Epstein files, she became target of the slings, arrows, and threats unleashed by the president and his enforcers. Her response? Flight. Once I left her, she resigned, Trump said. She would never have survived a primary. Maybe, maybe not. But the woman who posted a picture of herself holding a rifle alongside photos of 3 liberal congresswomen turned tail. Greene held a good number of lunatic beliefs, but her push to get to the bottom of Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking of girls was well-founded, and evidently shared by most Republicans. Greene would have learned a lesson in courage from a very different Republican Congresswoman, Liz Cheney of Wyoming. Cheney is about as ideologically conservative as they come, but she regarded Trump's violence-fueled attempt to halt the official vote count in an election he had lost as an attack on the democracy itself, and that's what the 2021 Capitol riot was. Cheney joined a handful of patriotic Republicans in supporting Trump's impeachment. For her brave stance, the so-called Freedom Caucus demanded her resignation from the House Republican leadership, where she ranked number 3. Before Trump erupted into his 2020 election lies, Cheney had supported about 93% of Trump's positions. She was a loyal Republican, but an even more loyal American. The amoral Kevin McCarthy, then Republican House Minority Leader, warned the party's political consultants that they'd have to choose between working for her or for him. The Morning Group, a fundraising firm that Cheney had hired to help prepare for the next primary, immediately refused to work further on her campaign. The spokesman for Cheney said, "It's sad but not surprising that Kevin McCarthy is continuing down the morally bankrupt path of embracing House Republicans who are white supremacists and conspiracy theorists, but attacking Liz Cheney for telling the truth and standing with the Constitution." Add to that the anonymous threats of personal harm, Cheney did not flinch. She ran for re-election in 2022. When asked whether she expected to lose, Cheney said that if defending the Constitution cost her the seat, it was a sacrifice she'd accept. She ended up losing to a MAGA drone. The coup attempt was okay with Greene, though she later found courage elsewhere. But the moment Trump called her a traitor, she threw on her sneakers and ran away. Another party member, Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, is now bravely facing a primary challenge after being one of 3 Senate Republicans who voted to convict Trump for inciting the January 6th riot. Cassidy is a physician who has long criticized Trump's health secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., over his fringe theories linking vaccines to autism. He's running in an election he might lose. When Green announced her sudden retirement, she warned, "If I am cast aside by the president and the MAGA political machine and replaced by neocons, big pharma, big tech, military-industrial war complex, foreign leaders, and the elite donor class that can never ever relate to real Americans, then many common Americans have been cast aside and replaced as well." She cast herself aside. In any case, if Green believes all that stuff, why doesn't she run for re-election and use it in her campaign? Because she's chicken. It happens that both Cheney and Green crossed Trump for good reasons, but Green fled. Outside of her entertainment value, she will not be widely missed, but Cheney keeps fighting. Armor's still on, and if she comes back to run again, plenty of good Americans will be cheering her on. You have been listening to a reading of articles and features from current issues of the Dunkirk Observer. We read from the Dunkirk Observer every Saturday at noon. Your reader has been Janice. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have a reading of our Northtown Bee papers, which includes Amherst, Clarence, Cheektowaga, Depew, and Lancaster. At 2 o'clock, we have our Southtown papers, which is the Orchard Park Bee, East Aurora Bee, West Seneca Bee, and Hamburg Sun. Following that, 3 o'clock is the Ampole Eagle. Stay with us. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another